Alright, so this is the iPhone 17 Pro, and I went with the deep blue version. If there was a matte black version, I would have gone for that. Unfortunately, there is no black version at this time around. I'm sure Apple will do maybe a mid-year release sometime next year, but for now, the most neutral color to me is this blue one. Even though the silver does look really nice in photos and videos, I actually don't like the two-tone of it in person, so I went with this color instead. So when I actually went to go see the models, the Cosmic Orange actually wasn't that bad in my eyes, so I might have gone for that, but it was just a little bit too bold for me, so I went with the deep blue instead. Now, in terms of first impressions, seeing this out of the box, it's actually way better than you would see at stores because the in-store models are scratched up, they're really smudgy, and they definitely look worse than what it will look like if you took good care of it. So one thing I do really like about the change from titanium to aluminum this time is that the titanium sides used to get really smudgy and fingerprinty, but this aluminum frame doesn't seem to really get any fingerprints. Of course, this Apple logo seems to get as smudgy just as usual. So the plateau isn't as bad as I thought, but I still think there's a lot of empty space, and I don't know, it's just, I think it'll grow on me, but first impressions, it doesn't look that great. I'm also not a big fan of the big two-tone. For the blue version, it's not as bad because it's pretty unison in terms of the aluminum and this glass back right here. But especially for the silver, the two-tone is a little too contrasty for me, but you know, this is really not a big deal. And with the move to aluminum, this phone is actually a little bit heavier than the iPhone 16 Pro, but you know, coming from the Galaxy Z Fold 7 and the S25 Ultra, which are heavier than the 17 Pro, this feels pretty light to me. Also, big credit to Apple for finally starting their base storage at 256 gigs instead of the paltry 128 gigs. You know, it's been about time for a phone this expensive, but I'm glad we're here. But you know, besides the big redesign, there's actually a lot to look forward to with the new 17 models. So the 17 Pro still has the same main and the ultra-wide lenses. They're the same as the 16 Pro, so we can't expect too much upgrades there. But the periscope telephoto lens has gotten a huge upgrade. It's now a 48 periscope lens, and it's bigger now at 1/2.55 inches. So it's a whole lot bigger, it's a whole lot of megapixels, and it's gonna look a lot better. So technically, the optical zoom is less at 4x optical instead of 5x, which was in the 16 Pro, but this is a higher quality, larger sensor for the periscope telephoto, so you will get much better image quality from 4x to 8x. And this is huge for me, but I'm really excited about the new selfie camera. So instead of the standard 12 megapixel selfie camera, which was in the 16 Pro and all the iPhones before it, the 17 Pro now has an 18 megapixel center stage selfie camera. So it's got that new square sensor design with a wider field of view, so you can take landscape selfies while keeping your phone in portrait, which is super convenient. So I'm actually hoping that Samsung and all the other Android OEMs copy this feature. So for me, this is not just about selfies. It's going to be super useful for vlogging since I can go to video mode and hold the phone in portrait mode while filming landscape vlogs. And by the way, this does support 4K at up to 60 FPS while holding it in portrait. So yeah, this is going to change the game for vlogging. And by the way, this is the model with the SIM card tray, so it technically has a smaller battery size compared to the only eSIM version. There's about a 200 milliamp hour battery difference, but I am really excited about the battery life for this phone. Because even compared to the 16 Pro, the battery size here is much larger. It's now at about 4,000 milliamp hours compared to last year's 3,500 milliamp hours. So we don't know the exact wattage that Apple is promising for the charging speeds, but it's technically faster than last year's 16 Pro, according to Apple, but we'll see how that turns out when I actually test this out. So those are the biggest things I'm excited about for the iPhone 17 Pro, but one thing I am worried about is iOS 26. So far, it seems like iOS 26 and iPadOS 26 and all the liquid glass animations and everything like that seems to be a bit of a performance killer for a lot of previous gen and current gen Apple devices. So even though this has the latest A19 Pro chipset, a whole new vapor chamber inside, and also more RAM with 12 gigs instead of last year's 8 gigs, I actually am worried about all the liquid glass animations. That's been a bit of a lag on all the other Apple devices. Now, in some ways, I do like the look in some customizations and with certain backgrounds, but yeah, let's see how the performance handles after a couple months of using this phone. All right, so I'm gonna get the rest of this set up with all my apps and logins and take it out with me for a real world day out and get back to you guys with my first 24-hour thoughts. So just to show you what I set up last night, this is my little home screen setup. It's all liquid glass, but it's in dark mode, so it's actually not that transparent. And I kind of like this setup. It looks really minimal. I'm back, and between the time I got home and now, I did play with my phone quite a bit, so we are quite down on battery. But you know, it's been a full 24 hours and I've been off the charger since around 8 a.m. So the first day, setting everything up, getting to know my usage patterns while using a variety of things, including the camera and social and maps. The battery life is really promising. So one of the first things I noticed for my 24-hour experience is that the design is the big story this year. But when actual use, even after a whole day of using this phone, especially with a case on, which kind of covers most of the design, you really forget about the new redesign, and any complaint that you had about the plateau and this two-tone, you kind of just stop caring about it. But one thing I do appreciate even with the case is the rounded edges. I feel like it's much more friendly to hold in the hand. So that's one plus there. And as you saw from the video, I did get to try out the camera quite a bit, and iPhone post-processing has gotten so much better over the last few years. You know, I really wasn't a fan of how photos turned out with the iPhone 15 series, but from the iPhone 16 series and on, I feel like the post-processing looks much more natural with not much sharpening. But even with those improvements, I did much prefer the regular raw images from this phone over the standard JPEG photos. I feel like the raw, softer images just look a lot better even when not edited. So this was taken in a standard HEIC format, and my hands and the cup and the details in the ice, it just seems a little bit over sharpened for my taste, and this is just at 2x. It's not really too much zoom at all. So I do think I will take most of my photos in raw 48 megapixel mode and editing things in Lightroom. I'm working on some presets, so stay tuned for a full photography guide for this phone. And something I did notice with the Pro RAW 48 megapixel mode is that the details, even when you zoom in, are still really well done. You just retain so much detail, you're able to do a lot more in editing mode. And as expected, I was really impressed with the new 4x optical telephoto lens. I took most of these shots in low light, and they're actually really clear with not too much noise in between. And even more impressive is that the 8x zoom is actually really usable. Of course, it's not optical zoom like Apple claimed in their event, but you know, it's a really good digital crop. The post-processing seems to clean up the details really well. And as you can see, I'm just zooming into the different parts of this 8x digital crop photo, and really nice and usable. So I only got to take a couple of shots with this new camera system, but I'm already super impressed. But like I suspected, iOS 26 is definitely a bit buggy here and there, and I do get animation lag or suspension when changing over themes or quickly changing between modes and apps, so that's something you do need to watch out for. I feel like Apple is trying to do a little too much with all the different animations for the liquid glass effects, and I feel like just every part of this UI is a little bit too jumpy than it needs to be. So I am hoping that a future software update does make things more consistent in terms of the animation speed and performance. But besides that, I was impressed with a lot of other things about iOS 26. For example, Spotlight works so well. I really wish Android had something like this. It's just so unified. It's able to search for anything in the settings. So if I wanted to go to battery settings, it just goes straight to battery just like that. Or if I want to do something a little more specific like low power mode, I can just get to it right there. And also I can use this to search the web super easily, like why did Arya do that in Game of Thrones? And then I could just click this and it'll open a new Google search. Also, while we're here, I noticed that in iOS settings and a lot of different apps, they optimize everything for good one-handed use. So as you can see, the search bar for the Spotlight is down at the bottom for easy one-handed reach. And even in third-party apps like Google Chrome, it's down at the bottom. So the only downside about this is that the liquid glass design kind of blends in the background and the search bar together, so it's kind of hard to see sometimes. And yeah, that's basically all my thoughts during my first 24 hours with the iPhone 17 Pro. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about this phone, what you're excited about or worried about. I'm going to be making a lot more videos using the iPhone 17 Pro, so if you want to watch those, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.